Good day. This is Dimitri Lascaris coming to you for Reason to Resist from Montreal, Quebec on November 10th, 2025. Today, we're very pleased to be joined by Dr. Dhiaa Daoud. Dr. Dawood is a Palestinian American emergency medicine physician from Florida. His parents are from Gaza. And during the past 2 years of Israeli genocide in occupied Palestine, Dr. Daoud traveled to Gaza and served as a medical doctor there. He later volunteered to travel to Gaza on the Freedom Flotilla. In fact, that was this past month, October. And he was arrested and kidnapped by Israeli genocide forces in international waters. After spending 3 days in an Israeli dungeon, Dr. Daoud returned to his home in the United States. Thank you very much for joining us today.
Thank you, Dimitri. Glad to be here.
So, Dr. Daoud, on the website of the Freedom Flotilla, you're quoted as stating as follows, quote, "I was torn with the gruesome scenes of daily mass casualties in the emergency department filled with burnt and dead infants, children, and women, and the unimaginable level of suffering and destruction, with unforgettable screams, or sometimes watching them choking, giving their last breath, unable to perform basic resuscitations because of the lack of medical supplies and intensive care beds in the middle of the world's unconscionable silence. After I came back from my medical mission, I made a promise to never turn my back on my people and will stand by them to the end. I've therefore decided to come back breaking the siege," close quote. And those powerful and moving words, you spoke them, I understand, just before you embarked on the voyage to Gaza on the Freedom Flotilla. So I'd like to invite you, Dr. Dawood, as difficult as it may be, to tell us in some detail what you actually witnessed when you were in Gaza. Where did you work? When were you there? And what did you see?
So, yes, Dimitri, in March 2024, I went to Gaza through the Rafah crossing. The Rafah crossing is the only crossing that Gaza people has or was open at that time. And it was like one of the, I would say, the mainstream lines where Gaza can actually have a little breath, just about enough so that they can live, I would say, just close to normal, like not even normal. The calories were counted, everything was counted, as you all know. The genocidal regime calculates the calories of every single Palestinian that goes through or that everybody consumes, and then accordingly they send certain amount of trucks through that crossings from Egypt. The At that time also that crossing was the only way that we can, us as medical doctors, go through in order to help our brothers and sisters in Gaza who have been inflicted by this gruesome genocide. This genocide is unconscionable. This genocide is one of the things that I don't think any in the entire history of humanity have ever experienced, in which all kinds of missiles, all kinds of fire, or firearms, all kinds of destruction has been inflicted on the people of Gaza, including killing, mass starvation, and at the same time torture by all kinds of means, such as fear, intimidation, incarceration, all kinds of torture. Like we were just like we were watching on TV what happened over there the first like months, and we're like, God, this is like, crazy. Like, this is like something that no human have ever witnessed. I was honestly like traumatized. I was like, I couldn't take it anymore. So I decided to go to Gaza, and then I basically emailed every single organization. Every single organization says that the spots were limited to only like, very highly specialties such as orthopedic, in which most of the injuries were. where amputations happen, where major fractures happen, and all of that. So there was a sharp and high necessity for these specialties. But then, I kept, insisting on going there because, most of these injuries are actually happen in the ER. And most of these injuries, like there's no doctors to really take care of them. And, sure enough, I was accepted by one of the organizations. I went to Egypt, and then through the Rafah crossing, I went to Gaza. It was one of the best moments I've ever had to go into Gaza, and and just to breathe of air of Gaza and then touch the sand of Gaza. It was really emotional for me. And I went into the crossing, and then the first thing I did was basically like I prostrated to God that I had the opportunity to go into Gaza, although this was like one of the most dangerous trips, and besides the other trip, to go there, because you'll never know what happens. And the Israeli genocidal regime is ruthless, whether you're a doctor or whether you're a journalist or whether you're any kind of professions. They target you because you are a source of life, and they want to end the source of life in Gaza. So I went there in a bus, and then while we're going in the bus, you can see the destruction that has been inflicted in the middle of Gaza. And then we went to Rafah, and then you can see the bombings in the streets left and right. And like exactly like Jared Kushner said, it's like a nuclear bomb has been dropped on it. So we went there into the hospital, and we were shocked by the scene. The hospital was filled with tents surrounding it, like at the horizon. The entire hospital was filled with refugees. Approximately 35,000 refugees were living inside the hospital. They were scared. They were really desperate. And then the only safe haven for them was the hospital. And that was another reason why the genocidal regime decides to bomb these hospitals, not because there's a Hamas inside it, or like they found weapons behind the MRI in a Shifa hospital at one point. None of that propaganda. I worked in these hospitals. These hospitals are very professional. They're one of the most compassionate hospitals in the world. They care about the people. They let the people stay. 35,000 people were living together with the patients, together with the doctors. I was working around them. I was like literally like looking at them every day, and towards the end, I became like friends with the families, like friends with Ammar, who's like cooking some food every day, and then smells nice, and I keep telling her and joke with her, it smells nice, and always invites me and all of that. And then, but this is the kind of things that are happening over there. And in the middle of that, the first step, when I walked into the hospital, I had like this fear that I don't know if I will be very helpful in an environment like that. But the minute I stepped inside the hospital and I saw the amount of people, the amount of need, it was like the exact description of it is oceans of need. And and then it's really crazy. Like I remember myself standing in the ER counter, and when I was standing there, there was like I had a wave of people, like 300 people talking to me at the same time, and I'm not exaggerating with the number. And they're all like have major needs, small needs, like all kinds of needs. People who lost their health care, they don't know what's going on. People who lost the entire healthcare system is disseminated. Hospitals are bombed. They don't have doctors. They don't know where to go. People who have chemotherapy to get, and they don't know where to get it from. People who have like simple, operations. They don't know how to do it because all of the operations are only held for the mass casualties. And then in the middle of that, you find some social problems. Like, for example, At that time, there was a chance where the families of the injured people can actually go through Rafah crossing to other countries like Qatar, Dubai, or the United Arab Emirates, or other countries, so that they can get treatment. I had this person comes into me with his burned little daughter, like all over her face and then all over her head and then all over her body. And then she's wrapped with this white gauze. And she's like, Dimitri was like the most beautiful angel you'll ever see, despite her burns that are covering her face. Entire face is burned. And, and then she's like, I wanted to touch her hand so that I can, maybe like give her a little comfort. And then she's just like very intimidated and very like scared, because that's what happens when you're traumatized. That's what's happening to the kids of Gaza, who are 50% of them wishing to die, and the other 50% are thinking that the death is imminent. And so I talked to him, I talked to the father, and then I say, what is your need? And then he says, the Israeli government gave the a permission for her to get treatment, and then a permission to the mom, but the mom is breastfeeding another baby. And then I can't really, and then they didn't give permission for the child, for the second child, to go with her. And then this is the kind of mind playing games that the genocidal regime also does. Well, okay, we'll give you a chance to go, but we'll give it to you only, and then we'll give it to your son. What about the baby? And they wouldn't do it. And then they wouldn't accept the other baby. So what happens is that the father now can't get a treatment for his daughter. Instead, he wants to change it to his name in order for him to go over there with his daughter to get the treatment. In addition to obviously the regular things that we see in the ER, which is like in mass amounts because of the destruction of the healthcare system. You also are bombarded with the mass casualties on like 3-4 times a day. So I will be sitting in the ER, standing, helping people, and then I'll have a wave of patients brought by the emergency medical services over there, and they'll just lie them flat on the floor, and then they'll just leave, and then for you to deal with them. And then they come in tens of patients, and then these patients are just in extremely dangerous and critical condition. And you have to really like the first mass casualty that I've seen was within 1 hour of me arriving to the ER. So after this 1 hour, I came across this mass casualty where I was like looking at patients and then trying to figure out who is alive, who is dead, and who is about to die. My emergency medicine instinct, kicked in, and then I just have to go to my basics, because these injuries are not textbook. You find people that are like shot in the head, people that are like from the explosive injuries they can't breathe. Because also the kinds of bombs, and this is something I learned over there, the kinds of bombs that they use are either extremely old or they're extremely sophisticated, like the bombs they will drop on the people and they will suction the air, and then after that they will explode. And when they do explode, the air comes in inside the lungs and explodes the lungs. So these are the kinds of injuries that we see, in addition to obviously the amputations and the entire thigh is about to fall apart, and it's just intact by a really thread of skin in both sides. All these kinds of injuries were like really unconscionable. Like like I have never seen something like that in my entire life, my entire career as an emergency medicine physician. I deal with trauma, I deal with gunshot wounds, I deal with all kinds of problems, but these things, Dimitri, this is just like I can't tell you this. They're scary. They're really scary. Like even to me as an emergency medicine physician, I was trying to hide my fear but I was scared. I was really, and like, I mean, I was competent, but at the same time, I was just like, seeing these scenes, and I'm like, my God, like this is insane. Like I can tell you like about this mass casualty that I've seen, where I had to like run around the patients and then put a chest needle in one of the patients, and then go to the second patient who had like both lungs collapsed, and then I had to put a chest tube in both sides. And while all of that on the floor, there are no beds, and then in between people, so you can imagine the amount of chaos over there, which at that time, that hospital, the European hospital where I was the only functional hospital in the entire Gaza Strip. So in between these patients, I came across a 10-year-old boy. And then, by the way, 99% of these casualties are all children, and I rarely saw an adult male who needs to be maybe a senior citizen, but other than that, that's it. It's either both sides of the spectrum, either the older men and women, or the children, and then the children was the really majority, or were the majority of cases in these mass casualties, sadly. And so I came across this 10-year-old boy, and then I saw him gasping for air, and I went and tried to listen to his lungs, and then you still can see him gasping for air, but his heart stopped. So I initiated CPR, and then the nurses behind me and in the ICU team, they told me, "No, doctor, we can't do CPR." And I said, "Why?" They said, "Because we don't have beds, we don't have ventilators." And then I was kind of shocked from what I heard, but I just kept doing the CPR, and they kept telling me, "Please, no CPR. We can't. This is an unsurvivable injury, and he's not gonna survive. So please let him go." So I just looked at them, and I was in shock, and I just went back. I went out of the ER, and then I was like, I was torn, like, how can I do that as an emergency medicine doctor? This is what I was trained to do. So I went back, and then I started doing the CPR, and then they told me, please, no CPR. Like we can't deal with this child. So I left that child, and he passed away, and then I just keep seeing him all the time, and I'm sorry, but it's very sad. This is a story, like, it happened over and over and over again every single day when I was there. You can tell, like, like how, from the videos that you see online, uh how these uh casualties are just like in critical conditions. And in the essence of emergency medicine is to really help these people. That's what I got trained for. And then when you can't help them just because there are no supplies, there are no ventilators, and then there are no simple things like central lines, like intubation kits and everything like that, it's just like insane. It's like, how can the world like look at this and just like stay silent? And how can the world like just look at it as like an endless show with episodes, like, from for like 9 months and 12 months and all of that, and it just doesn't budge? It's just very sad.
Did you see signs, Doctor, when you were serving in the European hospital that the Israeli forces were intentionally targeting children?
Oh, 100%. 100%. All of these mass casualties, they constitute a genocide 100%, and they constitute an intention to kill. These mass casualties, they come in numbers, and then they come all in kids. Like, how are these numbers are only children. How is that possible? When you have a mass casualty of 7 children together, and they're all burned with facial burns and an entire body of, and then this is one of the mass casualties that I was in. I had these 6 kids that came in, and then they're all burned, and they're all babies. They're all like, less than a year or 2 years, and they were all on the floor. And then I was like, walking around them, and I was just like, I thought that I'm in a nightmare. And then during that time, we were helping the kids. We called the ICU team. We called also the group that came in with us from the United States to come over immediately because of this unimaginable mass casualty. And they all came in, and then they all helped. Every team helped a child. And then I was walking in between them, Dimitri, and then I was shocked. I was like really shocked from the amount of injuries. And then these injuries are just inhalation injuries and all kinds of injuries. And then these patients are extremely difficult to intubate. Their epiglottis is all edematous, and in order for you to place a tube in their throat so that they can breathe, it's a very, you have a very lucky shot to really intubate them. And then I was horrified with the edematous epiglottis, and then I managed to intubate one of the children. And then we called the all international community with through Al Jazeera and through a lot of the news outlets at that time, and we sent them to the ICU, and then unfortunately nobody responded, and they all died. They all died. And then these are the injuries you see. So tell me when you see all these kinds of kids, and then when you see a child who is shot in the head and an X-ray, and then you see a child who is shot in the chest and an X-ray, how is that not intentional killing?
So let's talk now about your decision to go to Gaza on the Freedom Flotilla. What vessel were you on in October, and who else was with you on that vessel?
So on that vessel, we went on the Conscience Flotilla. The Conscience Flotilla is a flotilla that left from Rome. I apologize, left from Otranto, and then we stayed in Rome, and then we went to Otranto, and then after that, from Otranto we left over there through the sea. We sailed for 8 days over there on the Conscience Flotilla. In the Conscience Flotilla, we had the opportunity to sail with, or the whole entire flotilla was designed so that we can bring the world's attention to the targeting of healthcare workers and journalists. So half of the flotilla was journalists, and half of the other half were healthcare workers.
We are the healthcare workers on board the Conscience on our way to Gaza. We woke up this morning to find that one of our colleagues from MSF has been killed in Gaza. He is Omar Hayek is his name, and he will not be forgotten by us. Neither will the 13 who were killed before him be forgotten. We are bringing symbolically and physically aid and hope and courage to our colleagues who remain in Gaza. I am going to now hand over to the leader of our group, Dr. Fazia.
We, the healthcare workers on the board of the Conscience, demand the world to give us the safe passage as the Geneva Convention gave protection to all the healthcare workers of the world in whatever circumstances, even in Gaza when the genocide is raging on.
Free Palestine! Free Palestine!
And then, like I said, we brought aid with us as well. We had like anesthesia, we had baby formula, which is surprisingly the genocidal regime also tries not to allow this baby formula to enter into Gaza for the same exact reason, Dimitri, which is to prevent fertility, to prevent these kids from growing and to die at an early stage of their lives, which is the most critical stage. And then just to mention to you, Dimitri, the latest United Nations report mentioned that the preterm labor and also the low weight birth labor have been risen by 70%. So 70% of these births are like for preemies and then also for low birth weight. So these babies, they really need some nutrition, and in the nutritional, food, and then that comes in not from the mother, sadly, because the mother also are malnourished. It comes from baby formula that we brought with us, that a lot of doctors that brought with them through Karma Basalam, which is now the new crossing where the medical missions can go through. And then the baby formula is the first thing to be confiscated from them and taken away from them to prevent this kind of good thing to happen to these little babies at their early stage. So we decided to raise this awareness, and then we decided to bring aid, and we decided to break the siege, and we decided to come to Gaza to tell the world, like, it is very sad that us, the civilians, like normal people, like, I'm not a like a like an out extraordinary, and then the people who were with me, they're like just normal people who decided to go, and then they were so sick of what they're seeing for the past 2 years of this genocide and continuous genocide, and in brutal, and in vindictus, and it's just like extremely sad. And then so we decided to go, and and then
When the pirates, the ones who claimed to be soldiers, showed up, what happened to the vessel, and what did they give you any explanation for why they were boarding the vessel and why they were kidnapping you, or did they?
yes, they mentioned to the captain of the ship, they said that you have entered Israel in an illegal way, and you have to turn back, or to give us the aid through the proper channels, which we know that they will never go.
Right.
And otherwise you are going to face serious consequences.
Mhm.
Obviously, at that time, we didn't hear anything. We were just trained. If we hear the later on, I heard the recording, but what we heard was basically the alarm going on, that this is not a drill, because we used to do drills for the same purpose, is to minimize mass casualties. As you know, the genocidal regime is well known for causing harm for healthcare workers, and then for aids, and then for international aids who are coming to help the Gazan people, like what happened in the 2008 flotilla, the Mavi Marmara. And in when 50 people were injured and then 9 people were killed on the flotilla that were trying to help the people of Gaza, and they did the same exact thing. So we wanted to show that we're peaceful. We're not here to cause anybody a harm, and then we were like a group of doctors.
Mhm.
Like, so, how more peaceful it can be. I even had my white jacket on because I had an interview. And then, when the alarm went on, we all went to the top of the ship. We were in life jackets, and we were staying in an assigned seats for us, so that we can make sure that we're all protected, and then we're all unharmed. And then if there's any problem, it can be solved without the need for a killing. and they came in with their helicopters, sure enough, and then they swarmed the entire place. And then it was really a scary scene. It was like a hurricane, wind and water, and we were on the top of the ship, and we were all scared, and we're all like, just like, this is crazy.
Mhm,
This is crazy. Like, it's just like insane.
mhm,
And then they all came in on the top of the ship, and then they went down from the ship, from the the helicopter on top of the ship, and pointing their laser guns at us and all of that, intimidating us. And then after that, they went into the ship for a couple of hours, searching and destroying, and in all of that, and doing what they are best doing, which is destruction. We later on looked at the ship; it was just destroyed. And then they came into us, and then they took us into the room. They separated Huwaida, who is the organizer, Huwaida Arab, who is the organizer and the co-founder of the flotilla. She was sailing since 2008. A well-known figure, a Palestinian American lawyer, and an activist in human rights, and an amazing woman, to be honest with you, like one of the best people I've ever met in the flotilla, in addition to obviously all of them who are like, just like one of the best of the humanity. Like, I just to mention some of them, like, like we had an Italian guy by the name of Vincenzo. Vincenzo was active since 2013 in Gaza, and he established the first magazine in Gaza, and he witnessed a lot of his co-workers die in the West Bank and also in Gaza. And it's just a very sad thing. It's a very sad thing. Like it doesn't matter for the genocidal regime, as long as you are a Palestinian or helping a Palestinian, then you are an imminent threat to them. And in you being a Palestinian and breathing air as a Palestinian, you're just a dangerous thing to their existence. And it's kind of true because us as Palestinians, we are a landmark. We are basically there to tell them that we existed before you, and this land is ours. And it's not a surprise to them that we are a threat to them. And then we are, and I'm not gonna deny that, because we, the Palestinians, lived in this land. We ate from the olives of this land. We were in this land, and we will return to this land. So we are definitely a threat to them, and I want them to know that we are a threat to you.
and so what happened then when they took you, into, occupied Palestine? What were conditions like in this prison that you spent, 3 days in, and how did they treat you?
So after they put us in one room, they escorted the ship to Ashdod port. And Ashdod port, the party began. Like, humiliation, verbal abuse, beating, all kinds of abuse. We sat, and they took us into this area which was filthy and full of urine smell. We sat on it for like a couple of hours on our knees, and bending downwards, and you're not allowed to look anywhere. And then, I can tell you, it was like one of the worst experiences, one of the scariest experiences I've ever had. We were there, intimidated, threatened, and all of that. Why did you come here? You should have stayed there in America. Welcome to hell. And then they get you like they got me like a bracelet that is from one of my comrades that says "Free Palestine," and then they put it in front of me, and they said, "Do you want this?" Meaning, do you want to free Palestine? And then they asked us to say, "I love Israel, I hate Palestine," all kinds of verbal abuse. And then, like, they came in, and I was, like I said, I had my jacket next to me. They had me take it off because it would have been like a bad PR to them, because there were like people who were taking pictures, and I think they were like from the Israeli side, obviously, from the Israeli newspapers. And then they asked me. They said, "Oh, do you know Dr. Hussam Abu Safiya?" trying to intimidate me in a way, sensing like to insinuate that my fate is going to be like Hussam Abu Safiya, who is like the head of Al Auda Hospital, the CEO of the Al Auda Hospital, who was abducted again and placed in prison for right now for 8 or 9 months straight. And nobody knows anything about him. And then he had a famous video where Ben Gvir came in to his cell and threatened him and then abused him. It's just very sad. And but this is what happens to every Palestinian. This is what happens to all of the prisoners. And Ben Gvir said it, like treat the flotilla people like terrorists, and they sure did. They treated us like terrorists. They placed their hands in my neck the whole entire time in the airport, and then they made sure that I'm like like I'm humiliated. They see T-shirts within my bag with Palestine, and they throw it in the garbage, and it's like, oh doctor, this is Israel, no Palestine. I throw it in the garbage and all of that, and then it's just all kinds of intimidation and all kinds of like making your life miserable, that you came in here so that you never come back to this place. And not only that, it will be a lesson to everybody who's coming back. But they don't understand that these things, they only make us stronger. And so I go inside, and then I go inside the airport, and then I see Nadia Dakka, which is one of the lawyers over there for Adala. She's a famous lawyer in Palestine. Belongs to an organization called Adala. Adala is designed to help the Palestinian prisoners over there, to defend them and also to register any kind of human rights violations. And she does have a show that has aired recently on Al Jazeera, which shows like how like serious the Palestinian prisoners are being treated, in a very inhumane way, like all kinds of like torture, all kinds of like but anyways, so they took us in a bus, blindfolded us, and then zip tied us to the back. And then they put us in a sub-zero temperature with air blowing like crazy. We were shivering and we were just sticking together. And it's just again another form of intimidation and also torture for you, until we reached Al Nakab desert, where we were placed in a prison called Kitsiot, again, a well known prison for human rights violations, designed for the prisoners from Gaza to stay there and being tortured there. And the minute we went out of the prison, we also had another welcoming from the prison guards, with beating, with all kinds of names, with all kinds of intimidation. And they placed us in a cage. And then I can tell you, the prison over there, it's a no joke. It's a very serious prison. It's a very scary prison, very scary place to be in. Just being there is just like you are disconnected from life. And then if you don't know anybody that will ask about you, like and then somebody powerful like governments, you're forgotten for a very long time. And then that was the one of the scariest things that we faced, like, which is basically the sense, or like that I've seen as part of me being a Palestinian prisoner, which is facing what all Palestinian prisoners face, which is like uncertainty. That feeling is really scary, Dimitri, really scary. And then it's like, here I am, like I'm a doctor, I'm a civilian, I'm in the middle of the desert in this scary prison, and then you being yelled at by guards, and then intimidated, and then they put us in a cage. All of us put us in like 20 people, or at a time, to put us in this scary cage, and then hitting us with sticks and all of that, and calling us names. And then they speak Arabic, and then they speak to us like cussing us in Arabic, because they know we look like Arabic people, and then they cussing us, and like it's just scary. It was really scary. And then they went and they strip search us. and then they gave us like their suit, which is the same suit that you see for the Palestinian prisoners. And then they took us to each five of us to a cell, and then the cell was warm, or hot, but it was like the best feeling I've ever had. I was shivering for hours from the experience, from the cold weather, from the cold bus, from like whatever, from the horror that we've seen since the confiscation of the ship in the middle of the international water. That's by itself, Dimitri, is illegal and against international law, against Geneva Convention, which protects the healthcare workers and protects the humanitarian aid people from being harmed by any kind of conflict. So imagine, the Israeli genocidal regime, doing that, and God forbid anybody can say something. No, nobody said anything about it. No, none of the governments said anything.
So to your knowledge, did the U.S. government did anything to protect your rights and to help you get out of that hellhole of a dungeon?
So I'll be honest with you, I was very surprised. I was very surprised to see the American consulate coming in, because they didn't come in the previous flotillas. They didn't even dare to come. And that's one of the things that I like, that I always tell the American people, that the Israeli government and the Israelis, they don't care about you. You think that you're very sympathetic to their cause, and in which is, like creating their own government, and they're like, they flee prosecution and all of this propaganda that they spread, and instead of them stealing the lands of the Palestinian people. You would think, they will understand, but unfortunately they don't understand. They don't understand that, and that, me being a witness of this horror, I was just like, I was shocked. Like, how is the government of the United States is sending billions and billions of dollars to this genocidal regime to kill kids and torture people and torture doctors who are coming to help and aid the Palestinians, and yet they come in and they also abuse the consulate of the United States. The consulate of the United States came in, and then I was telling him, and I was yelling at them, and I said, you go to the president and you tell him this happened and that happened, and then you tell him this is the country that you are sending billions of dollars and aid them in their genocide and all of that, and this is what they're doing to your citizens. And then they're scared. They're like, the consul, they're scared. It's like, no, this is not our duty to do this. Our duty is to tell the ambassador, Mike Huckabee. And then Mike Huckabee is like a hawk for the this genocidal regime. He's like a very useless man, unfortunately, that we have in our government, in the United States government. And it's very sad to see. And then he's like, and then the guards were intimidating him. They were telling him, we told you 20 minutes, and he's like, just give me 2 more minutes, and he was scared of them.
You're talking about
It's
Huckabee himself?
no, the American consulate representative. It was not Huckabee. No, the American consulate themselves, they were really scared to really talk to us. And then they were really intimidated by the prison guards. And then you wonder who is governing who, and then who is controlling who. And then that's a very sad reality. And then we told him, we were on a hunger strike, because they were like basically preventing us from getting medications for people in our flotilla. We had this 68-year-old man, amazing man. He just put 2 stents in his heart about a couple of months ago, and he decided to come in a flotilla. And then we talked to him, and we're like, why are you doing that? You're going in this dangerous mission, and you might not come back. And then his answer was like, I came into peace with myself, that this is one of the things that I want to do for the people in Gaza. Such an amazing man, and amazing people that you meet over there. You meet like this surgeon who just didn't even finish his residency in surgery. He's just 1 month shy from finishing his residency. And I can tell you, residency is one of the roughest things a doctor goes through. Intense training and intense experience. And then after that, you just want to see the light at the end of the tunnel. But instead, he just left everything and he came in on this dangerous mission. We got a 29-year-old Irish Fionn. He's a 29-year-old Irish journalist, 29. And then we celebrated his 30th birthday on the ship. And instead of him, going with his friends and enjoy his time and all of that, he just decided to come in. And many more, like this um, Iranian PhD in statistics and biostatistics, and she came in with us. And then she said that she sat with her family gathered in a dinner table, and in all of them, they decided one of them has to go from their family. And every single one of them shared his positives and then negatives, and then they decided to send this lady, Nima. And amazing person, an amazing family, like the whole entire family decided to send somebody on this flotilla. Such like amazing people, to be honest with you. And then many more, like we had doctors who came in multiple times to Gaza, and then later on they were forbidden from going into Gaza. And that's one of the things that us as healthcare workers wanted to raise, is that we're unable to go rescue people, we're unable to go do what we're supposed to do as doctors. Their genocidal regime is preventing us from doing that. And the essence for me, the essence of emergency medicine is actually to prevent mass casualties. Witnessing these mass casualties on a daily basis is not the solution, Dimitri. Like I've been seeing these mass casualties. I think I've probably witnessed close to 20 or 30 mass casualties when I was there. One of the worst things one of the worst experiences in my life. So, to prevent these mass casualties, we had to just go. The problem in these mass casualties, the problem in Gaza is the occupation. And in us going there, we had to end the siege, end the occupation by this way. And we're not going to sit there and just wait for the genocidal regime to send us more and more and more of these mass casualties every single day.
Now, you were not born in the United States, right?
No,
All right.
no,
You're
I
you're
was
you're a naturalized U.S. citizen, and
correct.
in the current political environment, Dr. Daoud, uh, doing what you've done in defense of the Palestinian cause as a naturalized U.S. citizen of Palestinian origin, that's kind of risky in the world in which you now live under the Trump administration. Have you yourself been subjected to any kind of threats, implicit or explicit threats, by the authorities in the United States as a result of your work for the Palestinian cause?
So, I can tell you this, Dimitri. Um, Liberation doesn't come without a cost. And if you have to sacrifice, the Palestinians, the Arabs, everybody, the whole entire world has to understand that it has to come to an agreement on that. If you don't sacrifice, if you don't have a sacrifice in your job, if you don't have a sacrifice in your time, if you don't have a sacrifice with your family, if you don't have a sacrifice with yourself, or by yourself, this is liberation and freedom is not going to happen. We all of us have to come to an agreement. And I sat with my wife, I sat with my kids, and I said the same exact words. I told them, I said, I remember before I went to the flotilla, I bought my son a lunch, and then that was the day before, and I sat with him, and I said, listen, I'm going into this dangerous trip, and then I might not come back. And then I want you to be strong, and I want you to continue what I'm doing. And you know what he told me, Dimitri? He told me, Dad, if you come back, The year after, if I don't care if I'm 10 or 11 or 12 or 13, when you go back, I want to go back with you. So this is the kind of generation that we have to really like raise. This is the kind of generation that we really have to indoctrinate in them, that sacrifice is a must in order to liberate our countries. And in none of the countries around the world had their liberation without a cost. Yes, it's a hefty cost, and yes, it's a very sad cost, but it has to be made. It has to be made. Other than that, liberation is not going to come. And then, yes, intimidation from the United States government will happen. And then, if it doesn't happen now, it will happen later on. And then they'll dig in your past, they'll dig in your future, they'll dig in your present, they'll dig everywhere so that they can find something about you, and then smear your reputation and smear you and then label you, whether you're anti-Semitic or an anti this or anti. And then we're not anti-Semitic, Dimitri. We love the Jews, we love the Christians, we love the Muslims, we love everybody. The only people who hate all of us are the Zionists. They even hate Jews. They hate the religious Jews, and then they intimidate everybody. They're like they're scary people. They're psychopaths. If I have to really describe it, they're real psychopaths. And then we were living together, us, the Jews, the Christians, and the Muslims, for thousands of years. We had no problems. We had no problems until the Zionists came in, and then they came in with the Judaism label, and in the Star of David on their flag, and then they mixed their religion together with the Zionism, and then they labeled the Judaism as Israel, and the love to Judaism comes through the love of Israel. And then they poisoned the people's mind. And it's very sad. They poisoned, not only the American people, but they also poisoned the Jewish community in the United States. But luckily, the Jewish community, especially the young people, are right now witnessing I would say, awakening. And then they're basically saying, like, for example, the Jewish Foundation, Jewish Voice Foundation, they're just they're very active against this genocide, and then they're extremely supportive. And then you saw what happened in the Grand Central Station, where the Jewish people came in, and then they protested over there. It was just a heartwarming feeling to see our brothers and sisters, the Jewish brothers and sisters, standing by us and in saying not in our name. But to answer your question, I've been stopped in the airport. I've been asked about Gaza by the Homeland Security in JFK for like an hour, and then I almost missed my second flight. But I had to tell them, I can't be here. I really have to go. And then they couldn't find anything, because we're just doctors trying to help. What are you trying to find? And then really, that's who we are. We are just a bunch of doctors who are trying to really help the people of Gaza. And that's what we saw, people who are dead and dying, and mass casualties, and then people shot in the head, shot in the chest, and all of that. It's a very sad scene. Very sad scene.
Well, you've summarized, Dr. Daoud, why we call this program Reason to Resist. It's because freedom cannot be achieved without sacrifice. So, on that, I'd like to thank you, on that note, for joining us today and sharing with us these extraordinary and painful experiences that you've had in defense of the Palestinian cause. And, we honor your sacrifice, sir. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Dimitri. I'm honestly honored to be one of the people who went to Gaza and tried to break the siege a second time. It's an honor for me. And in anything I do for Gaza, and anything anybody does for Gaza, or any kind of harm that comes from helping Gaza, should be placed as a badge of honor in every single person that does it. And people should not be intimidated, should not be feeling bad, or even like, feel like they can't do much. No, every single thing that you do for Gaza is a badge of honor on your chest until the end of the days.
And wear it proudly. Thank you so
Yes.
much, Dr. Dawood. So we're
Thank you. Thank you, Dimitri.
coming to you today from Montreal, Quebec on November 10th, 2025. Thank you very much.
I appreciate it. Thank you.